As you may recall, Gutierrez was overseeing the use of weapons on the movie set. Gutierrez and Baldwin are both charged.
And according to court documents, Gutierrez is also facing allegations that she was under the influence at the time.
There is a saying in my line of work that everybody wants to be in charge until it's time to hold somebody accountable, because the cost of complacency is high. And what happened on the set of Rust was an absolute tragedy, because very few people wake up for work in the morning and say, this is going to be my last day on earth. Or very few people wake up and say that this is the day that my actions caused the passing of another individual. But what really happened on the set of Rust to cause the cinematographer, Miss Hutchins, to pass? After reading this OSHA report, does it not seem like the leaders do not want to be held accountable, and they're trying to pass the blame off to the little guy? This is a situation where a whole lot of fingers are pointing in a whole lot of directions right now. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. And if an open conversation is something you prefer, then this is the place for you. Welcome to The Point, so let's talk about it.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
It was very recently the state argued against having this OSHA report be allowed into the trial in the involuntary passing charge of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. Now, the quick overview for those of you who haven't been following the case is on the set of Rust, Alec Baldwin's character pointed a revolver at the camera and fired his weapon. Now, in that weapon wasn't a dummy round, it was actually a real projectile. That projectile would go through the chest of Miss Hutchins and ultimately cause her to pass. Now, the state is blaming a whole lot of people in this scenario. Mr. Hall's already took a plea deal. Alex Baldwin's trial will be after Miss Gutierrez's. And they are saying the armor is also at fault here. Because when somebody passes, we all want answers. We all want to know what happened. And it is not very often that criminal charges follow these types of things. It is usually just civil. There is some sort of negligence found, and the company will pay monetary damages. But in this particular instance, the state is going after criminal charges. Now, they are painting the picture that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was the armorer. It was her responsibility. She was the one that loaded the rounds into the revolver, and that was her job. But not only was that her job, she was also hungover from the night before, and they're saying that is because she was drinking and using substances. So they're painting a picture of a lackadaisical employee who really didn't care for any safety precautions, and it was her inaction to do her job that led to the passing of another individual. Now, up until reading the OSHA report, a lot of us kind of had that same idea, that she was responsible. It was her job to check all these things. It was her job to manage all this. It was her job to make sure these things were done safely. So she's at fault here, or one of the people at fault. But that OSHA report is painting a totally different story. Now, when you review that OSHA report, they cite multiple findings where the production as a whole failed to do their job. In fact, they state this specifically towards the end of it. The employer, Rust Movie Productions, LLC, demonstrated plain indifference to the hazards associated with firearms by routinely failing to practice their own safety protocols, failing to enforce adherence to safety protocols, and failing to ensure that the handling of deadly weapons was afforded the time and effort needed to keep the cast and crew safe. The safety coordinator was present on set and took no direct action to address safety concerns. So really, was she at fault here? And as you go through that report, you want to ask yourself a couple of questions. Did she have time to do her job as the armorer? And at any point, did she ever raise any concerns over safety issues on the set? And who's responsible for ordering the ammunition? And really, was this incident actually criminal? Now, the state is making the claim that she, of course, had time to do these things. She was the armorer, that was her job. But she actually had a couple of different jobs here. Not only was she the armorer, she was one of those individuals who were supposed to help with the props. And she makes the statements multiple times, according to this report and her own testimony, that she expressed concern over the available time for her to do this job safely. In fact, it was one of her bosses in a text message that told her they didn't have time to do anything else training-wise for the day. And she had even went up to Mr. Hall and said, "I need more time to check these weapons properly." Now, the OSHA report validates a whole lot of these statements. The state is saying since she was responsible, the loading of the weapons fall on her. The OSHA report says that it's the production's culture as a whole that is the problem here. So she has raised concerns about safety. She has raised concerns about various issues with these weapons on the set, but the production as a whole is driving forward. They're disregarding her concerns. Now, she's at the very bottom of the totem pole within this hierarchy of the movie set. So what is she actually going to be able to do beyond raise these concerns? Well, some individuals on set walked off after having problems with multiple safety issues. But not at any point did the production stop and those safety issues be addressed. They just kept pushing forward, regardless of the number of people who left the set. So if she's expressing concerns for these things, how is she being charged for a crime at this point? Does anybody really legitimately believe she had time to do her job properly? And who ordered this ammunition? The narrative online will have you believe that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was over all this stuff. And certain individuals do paint a picture that she was responsible for ordering this stuff and she was responsible for handling it solely. But the OSHA report says Rust Productions was in charge of ordering this ammunition. And that ammunition came from PDQ Arm and Prop in New Mexico. An important side note here is Hannah sued Seth Kearney, who was over PDQ Arm and Prop. She's blaming him for the live rounds ending up in boxes that would make their way to the set, because the production team never intended to use live rounds on set. So when this all boils down, either Rust ordered the wrong ammunition or PDQ sent the wrong ammunition. And as it says in the OSHA report, the armorer didn't have the appropriate amount of time to ensure that all these rounds were safe. Now, who's really to blame in this situation is really a matter of perspective. Individuals who make the case that it's Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's responsibility, so it's her fault that the live rounds ended up in the weapon, it is a valid argument. And her history of substance problems that the state is saying happened doesn't paint a good picture in that direction. But you can also make the argument here that since she wasn't afforded the appropriate amount of time, since the overall safety culture on the set seems to be lackadaisical at best, what could she really have done other than walk off the set altogether? Because even when there were negligent discharges on set, nothing happened from it. There wasn't an investigation. There wasn't anybody that got fired. It was just simply some individuals asking, "Hey, what happened? Watch out, don't do that again." There's protocols in place that were not followed. And I do understand individual responsibility, but when you're within an organization that is culturally inept of anything to do with safety, there's not a whole lot you're going to be able to do as the employee to stop that train from moving forward. In fact, there have been incidences in the past where individuals have raised safety concerns and ultimately lost their job. And I would be curious to hear where you fall within that argument down in the comments below. And was she criminally negligent? The state is saying the combination of her handling that weapon and loading that weapon along with the substances make her criminally responsible. And I see both sides of the argument at this particular point. Yes, she did handle the rounds. Yes, she was responsible for loading the rounds. But given how that report reads, regardless of how responsible she was trying to be, it doesn't seem like she was really afforded any type of time here. In fact, it reads like she was only allocated a certain amount of time to work on her armorer responsibilities, and then she needed to immediately get back to helping with the props. And as we said at the beginning of the video, she did raise concerns about this, and her concerns were disregarded. We can all agree that it's an absolute tragedy. We can all agree that something like this shouldn't have happened. But the picture being painted in my mind right now is the production company cut costs wherever they could to make as much money as possible, because they probably knew a whole lot of people weren't going to watch this thing. And it's in that cost cutting that they skirted certain safety protocols and put the entire crew at risk. And it's because they put them all at risk and they ignored what they should have done that this incident happened. As I see it right now, I don't see her being criminally negligent at this time, because it does seem like the overall production and the day-to-day activity of everything going on set was very rushed. It was very careless. And the fear of losing your job can be a powerful motivator when it comes to how you address safety concerns. As always, if you see any of these things differently, you can let me know down in the comments below. Other than that, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here. Y'all stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.